Good afternoon, I'm going through the lower move calculator paper. We'll start with this question. So things to note here, the question does ask you to round your answers to one decimal place. Okay, so in this question we have increase 330 by 23%. So we're going to do 330 times by 1.23. When we increase by 23%, we're really finding 123%, and 123% as a multiplier is 1.23. When you do this on your calculator, you get 405.9. Next question. We're doing 47.51 decreased by 17%. So what we're really doing is finding 83%, and 83% as a multiplier is 0.83. When you do this on your calculator, you will get 339.4 to one decimal place. Next, it says increase 935.621 by 111%. So if we're increasing by 111%, we're really finding 211%, which means we're multiplying it by 2.11. When you do this on your calculator, you get 1974.2 to one decimal place. Okay, right, we'll move on to the next question. So, in this question you're asked to do basic substitution. So really you just have to make sure your calculator display looks like it does in the question. So here we're going to really do 5 plus negative 1.21 plus 0.375. 0.375 incidentally is just 3/8 as a decimal. You could have written 3/8 and it would have been fine. This gives you an answer of 4.165. The next question then, we're going to do x, which is 5, times by negative 1.21 times by 0.375 or times by 3/8. When you do this in your calculator, you're left with an answer of negative 2.2687. 5. You don't need to round any of these questions. You just can leave you're not asked to round, so don't round. In this next question, we will just make our calculator display look like the following: x plus 3/8 times by the square root. Now it's the square root of negative y. A few people had a couple of problems with this because they just did the square root of y. The square root of negative y is negative 1.21, so really it's the square root of 1.21. So if you got maths error in this question and you weren't sure why, it's because you were trying to square root negative 1.21 and not square rooting 1.21. Okay, so as I said, yeah, square rooting 1.21. Now, the square root of 1.21, you could do this without a calculator, it's just 1.1, because, 11 squared is 121, so 1.1 squared is 1.21. Anyway, doing this in your calculator gives you an answer of 1.0825. Okay, great, next question. So, how long will it take this tap to fill 3 baths? Well, it takes the tap 25 minutes to fill 1 bath, so 3 baths is going to take 75 minutes. It's a direct proportion question. Multiply both sides of the equation by 3. Okay, so after 15 minutes, what fraction of the bath would be filled with water? Well, 15 minutes represents 15 over 25 as a fraction of the bath that's filled. It takes 25 minutes in total, so 15 over 25 is the fraction we filled. This ends up being 3/5 as a fraction. Okay, in this question, you're asked to look at Tesco's profits. I think these are actually their real profits, by the way. So Tesco made a profit of 3.3 billion in 2013 and projected to make a profit of 3.1 billion in 2014. What percentage has Tesco's profits fallen between the years? So we could do 0.2 divided by 3.3. So we're doing the actual change divided by the original amount, and it's like you got 0.2 in a test and the test was out of 3.3, so to work that out as a percentage you do 0.2 divided by 3.3 times 100. This gives you an answer of 6% to one decimal place, or one significant figure rather, and 6.0606 recurring was the number you got in your calculator, so one significant figure would be 6%. Some people would have done 3.1 divided by 3.3 and probably would have got an answer of about 0.9 or 93 point something percent, which would have been 6% to one significant figure. This is the way I would suggest doing it, though. Okay. It takes 5 people 8 hours to paint the Great Hall. How long would it take 10 people to paint the Great Hall? Well, simple start. If we double the number of people, you would expect half the number of hours, so 10 people should take 4 hours. How long would it take 3 people? Well, if we know what 5 people is, we could work out one person. One person should take 40 hours. Divide that left side by 5 times the right side by 5. So if we know what one person is, we can work out what 3 people is. 3 people, well, if we times the number of people by 3, we're going to divide the number of hours by 3. So 40 divided by 3, this is going to be 13 1/3 hours, okay? So, or 13.3 recurring. So many people decided to write this as 13.3 hours. It's not 13.3 hours, it's 13 1/3 hours. Don't round here, you don't need to round. Okay? It's not 13.3 hours. So 13 1/3 hours is going to be 13 hours, and 1/3 of an hour is 20 minutes. If you were to write 13.3 hours, you would have got 13 hours, and then 0.3 hours, well 0.1 hours is 6 minutes, so 0.3 hours would have been 18 minutes. But it's not 18 minutes, it's 20 minutes. Okay, so part C. If the hall must be painted within 45 minutes, how many people will be required? So we're going to try and get 45 minutes to be the right hand side here. So we could work out how many people would be required for 1 hour. This would be 40 people. So we might then say, well, what's 15 minutes? 15 minutes would be 1 hour divided by 4. So that'd be 160 people. And then to find out 45, we can times by 3. So 45 minutes, well, if we divide 160 by 3, you get 53 1/3, sorry. So 53 1/3 people, well, really we need 54 people in this case. A lot of people, well, several people made the following mistake. They got to the stage where they said 40 people is equal to 1 hour, and they said, well, that means that 80 people is equal to half an hour. So by deduction, they said, well, 45 minutes is halfway between an hour and half an hour, so that means that halfway between 40 and 80 will be the required number of people. This doesn't work. You can think about why this doesn't work. Maybe pause the video and think to yourself why you can't make this argument. One reason you can't make this argument is because to get from 40 to 60 we have times by 1.5. To get from 1 hour to 45 minutes I would therefore have divided by 1.5. 1 hour divided by 1.5 is the same as 1 hour divided by 3/2, which is the same as 1 times 2/3, which is 2/3 of an hour, which would have been 40 minutes. So actually it would take 60 people 40 minutes and not 45 minutes. Okay, another way to think about the same thing is to get from 5 people to 60 people, we would have times by 12. So to get from 8 hours, we would have divided by 12. 8 divided by 12 is the same as 2/3. 2/3 of an hour, as I said, is 40 minutes. Okay, good. We'll move on from this question then. So in this question we're looking at percentage change, or increase rather. So increase by 31.25 is finding 131.25%, which as a multiplier is 1.3125. 64 times by 1.3125 is 84. Now it says that 58 1/3% of the students in 2014 who attained an A-star were girls. So we're going to do 84 times by 58 1/3%. Well, timesing by 58 1/3% is the same as timesing by 0.58333333333333 recurring. You can find this recurring symbol on some of your calculators. You might want to see if you can work out where it is. Otherwise, if you just write enough 3's, you should get the answer, the correct answer. But be careful, don't write it as 0.583. It's not 0.583, it's 0.58333 going on for a long time. Another way to have done this would have been to say times by 58 1/3 and then divide that by 100. because that's what it is as a decimal, 58 1/3 divided by 100. So if we times by 58 1/3, well, this is the same as timesing by 175 over 3. So you could have done 84 times by 175 over 3, and then divide that number by 100, and that would have given you the same answer. Anyway, the answer was 49. Lots of people, because they didn't write enough 3's, or just stopped very quickly, just wrote 0.583, they didn't get 49, they got some rounded number. Now also, be very aware that, it's the number of girls. You're not going to have 49 point something girls. Okay, next question. So in this sale, jacket was reduced by 30%. The sale price was £112. So that means we've done the original price of the jacket times by 0.7, because we have reduced it by 30%, and that gave us an answer of 112. So we could write this as an equation with x if we wanted, and then to find x we would divide both sides by 0.7. Okay, this gives you an answer of 160. Now what some people did was they did 112 times by 1.3. I don't think I could have stressed in lessons how wrong that is. You had to do 112 divided by 0.7 to get the correct answer. Okay, right, we're looking at a classic compound interest. Jackie has money in a bank. 2 years ago she had £300. It increased by 3% each year. It was compound interest, so it's 3% of 3% of 3%. So how much does he have now? So he would have 300 times by 1.03, because each year it increases by 3%, and because it's 2 years, it's 1.03 times 1.03, which is 1.03 squared. Do this in your calculator, you get £318.27. Next, how much will he have 9 years from now? Well, now he has £318.27, so you could do £318.27 times 1.03 to the power of 9. Alternatively, it's 11 years from when he started investing, so you could have also done 300 times by 1.03 to the power of 11. This would have given you £415.27, rounded to the nearest penny. Excellent. Next question. So this virus is infecting the population of 7 billion people, approximately the number of people on Earth. People are dying and the population is reducing in size by 7% each day. This is another compound interest question, but with decreasing, with a multiplier that is decreasing each time. So the multiplier we're going to be using is 0.93. Okay? This is also kind of trial and error in its nature. So for after the first day, we know that we've got 7 times by 0.93. So that's the number of people we have after the first day, because they've been reduced by 7%. After the second day, it would have been 7 times 0.93 squared, and after the third day, 7 times 0.93 cubed. We can keep going, and then we go to day 9, which is 7 times 0.93 to the power of 9, and day 10 would have been 7 times 0.93 to the power of 10. With to the power of 9 days, you end up with 3.64 billion approximately. And after day 10, you end up with 3.38786 billion people. Okay? So, we're looking for how long it takes for the population to halve. So it halves somewhere between day 9 and day 10, because we're looking for when the population becomes about 3.5 billion. So it's definitely halved after 10 days. So we say it will take 10 days for the population to halve. Okay, next question. Okay, solve the following equation. Now again we had the classic problem of lots of people rounding recurring decimals. Just don't do this ever, okay? Unless you are told to round to 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, 1 decimal place, then round your final answer. But don't round until your final answer. Don't round in the question. Okay, so the first thing people might have done would be to, if you were doing this question, I'll do the correct version, I'll show some mistakes, then I'll do an alternative method that might have made your life easier. So to start with, we might do 2/3 times by 3x, expanding this bracket. 2/3 times by 3x, well 2/3 times 3 is 2x. And then 2/3 times by minus 2 is going to be minus 4/3. So that's what you get when you expand that bracket. Right in the rest of the equation. Okay, now you might combine like terms, so you might do minus 4/3 plus 1. Minus 4/3 plus 1 is going to be, well, it's minus 4/3 plus 3/3, which is negative 1/3. Okay, and then we write everything else as it was. Now you might take away 2x from both sides to give you minus the third on the left hand side and 5x minus 5 on the right hand side. And then you might add 5 to both sides. Minus the third plus 5, well, if you think about that, that's minus the third plus 15/3, which is going to be 14/3. Okay, and now to find out what x is, you're going to divide both sides by 5. You could write the answer straight away as being 14/15, or if you want to check that, you might do 14/3 divided by 5, which is the same as 14/3 times a fifth, and 14/3 times a fifth is going to be 14/15. Okay, let's look at the mistake that lots of people made. So you might have written this. Okay, this is fine. This makes sense, but I don't understand why you'd write a recurring decimal when fractions are just much nicer. Okay, some people though, they didn't do 2/3 times 3x to get 2x. They did 2/3 and they said, well, that's 0.6 recurring times 3x. 0.6 recurring times 3x, well, let's just say that's 0.6. And 0.6 times 3x, well, that's 1.8x. That's not right. Not right. Some people rounded it to 0.7 times 3x and said it was 2.1. Still not right. If you think about 0.6 recurring, 0.6 recurring, well, if we're on a number line and that's 0.6 and this is 0.7, then 0.6 recurring is somewhere between them. Okay? And this is not the same. It's neither 0.6 nor 0.7. You know, if we were to zoom in on this particular part, 0.6 recurring is somewhere between 0.6 and 0.67. If that's 0.66 and that's 0.67, then 0.666 recurring is somewhere between there still. Don't round it. Okay, it's not the same thing if you round it. Okay, if you had have gone down this method and you got the expansion correctly, then you might have combined like terms here and said, well, minus 1.3 recurring plus 1 is negative 0.3 recurring. And some people did get to this stage, and even got to this stage where they took away 2x from both sides. Okay, then they might have added 5 to both sides. And this is where they might have got stuck. 5 take away 0.3 recurring is not, 4.7. It's 4.66666 recurring. Or you can think about it as 5 take away a third. And 5 take away a third is really going to be 4 2/3. Okay, 4 2/3 you might have written as 14/3, and then we get to where we were before. Okay, this is all very well. I think a nicer way to start this question would have been to say, take the question that you were given and say, what don't I like about it? Well, the thing I don't like about it is the fact that I've even got a fraction. So you could get rid of this fraction if you times everything by 3. So if we times this term by 3, well, we've got 2/3 times 3x minus 2. If we times this term by 3, you're going to get 2 lots of 3x minus 2. Okay? Times the next term by 3 and you get 3. Times this term by 3 and you get 21x, and times this term by 3 and you get minus 15. Okay? So now we have a question that's much easier to solve that we could do very easily because there aren't any fractions to deal with. If we were to then expand this bracket, you get 6x minus 4 plus, and then write everything else as it was. Then combine like terms, and then what you can do is you can take away 6x from both sides and add 15 to both sides and get 14 is equal to 15x, leaving you with the final answer as x is equal to 14/15. Okay, now I won't go through the final question from the paper. I'm going to leave that one out. If you really want to know about that question, then you can ask me at some point. Good stuff. Right, I shall hope that was useful, and I'll see you in lessons.